Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere a little different. Not castles, not cobblestone streets, but a place far hotter, louder, and dirtier. We're going back to 1968, deep into the hills of Vietnam, at a spot that became one of the most infamous names of the entire war, Khe Sanh. The Marines who were sent here weren't stepping into a romantic adventure or a storybook of glory. They were stepping into a living nightmare made of mud, shelling, and endless waiting. Forget the clean uniforms and movie versions of heroism. Truth is that life on that base was brutal, exhausting, and terrifying in ways that can't be polished up with patriotic speeches. Most of the men who lived through it didn't talk much about the details, and when they did, it wasn't about glory. It was about the smell of rot, the rats chewing on rations, the sound of incoming rockets before dawn, and the constant feeling that each day might be their last. So, before you get comfortable, take a second to dim the lights, maybe grab some water, and settle in. This isn't going to be the highlight reel you've seen in documentaries. It's the daily grind, the endless discomfort, and the quiet horror of what it was really like to be a Marine at Khe Sanh. From the moment you wake up on a damp cot to the second you try to close your eyes with artillery still echoing in your head, we're walking straight into it. Congratulations. You've just stepped off a transport plane onto the red dirt of Khe Sanh. The good news is you made it here alive. The bad news is now you have to live here. You've just stepped off the plane. The engines roar behind you, but the sound isn't comforting. It's more like the final notes of safety peeling away into the sky, leaving you stuck here on the ground. The first thing you notice isn't the gunfire in the distance, or the barbed wire fences, or even the Marines hustling around with weapons slung over their shoulders. It's the ground itself. Red dirt. Thick, wet, and clinging. It coats your boots instantly, crawling up your legs as if it's trying to pull you down. It's not just dirt. It's sticky, suffocating mud. The kind that never leaves your clothes no matter how much you scrape. Welcome to Khe Sanh. The air is heavy, hot, damp, and almost too thick to breathe. You inhale and it feels like you're pulling in warm soup. Sweat beads on your forehead before you even set your bag down, and it doesn't stop. It just pours, rolling into your eyes, stinging, mixing with the red dust so that your skin is streaked orange before you've even walked 100 feet. You wipe it away with your sleeve, but the sleeve is already soaked. So all you're really doing is smearing mud and sweat together. You're supposed to feel like a Marine here, disciplined and sharp. Instead you feel like a lost animal dumped into a pit. The base isn't polished or orderly. It looks like it's been chewed up by some giant beast and spit back out. Sandbags are stacked unevenly, some burst open and spilling out. Metal sheets are bent into makeshift roofs that sag under the weight of rainwater. Wooden planks try to form walkways, but they've sunk halfway into the mud, so every step is a gamble. You're not walking through a base. You're stumbling through a swamp dressed up in military gear. The smell comes next. Not the clean bite of gun oil or the faint tang of jet fuel that you might expect. This is worse, much worse. It's a cocktail of rot, smoke, sweat, and death baked together under the humid sun. The stench of garbage pits, human waste, rotting food, and the occasional body carried back under a poncho. You don't want to breathe it in, but you can't escape it. It rides on the air, seeps into your uniform, and burrows into your nose until you can almost taste it. Even when you think you've gotten used to it, Something new wafts in. Burning rubber, wet socks, spoiled rice, and it's like a punch all over again. The Marines who've already been here barely notice. They walk past you, shoulders hunched, eyes hidden behind mud-caked helmets. Their faces look older than they should. Some of them are barely out of their teens, but their expressions are carved deep, like stone eroded by too many storms. They don't look at you long. A quick glance, then their eyes slide away. It's not rudeness, it's survival. Out here people don't last. Getting to know someone too well just means another hole in the ground to dig later. You shift your gear, but it's already cutting into your shoulder. The straps rub against your skin until it feels raw, but no one cares. Everyone carries the same load. Rifle, ammo, canteens, a helmet that never sits quite right, and a pack stuffed with things that will all eventually get ruined by the mud anyway. Socks, letters from home, maybe a photo folded so many times the faces have started to blur. Every Marine here is a walking storage locker of weight, sweat, and half-destroyed possessions. As you trudge forward, you realise there's no safe place to look. The horizon isn't peaceful. It's jagged hills, thick jungle, and distant smoke rising from places you're not supposed to be curious about. The sky doesn't help either. It presses down on you, low and grey, promising rain that never cleans anything, just makes the mud deeper, the air heavier, and the trenches flood higher. Overhead, planes rumble. Sometimes they're bringing supplies. Sometimes they're leaving with bodies. You stop wondering which. There's no welcome committee here. No speeches, no briefing that makes sense of it all. Someone points vaguely toward a line of bunkers and tells you to find a spot. That's it. That's your introduction to Khe Sanh. You drag your feet toward the sandbags, trying not to think about how fragile they look. This isn't the kind of fortress you've seen in training films. These walls won't stop much. Mortar shells and rockets don't care about sandbags. You'll learn that soon enough. The first real lesson hits when the ground shakes. A dull thump rolls across the dirt, then another closer this time. It's not gunfire. It's not thunder. It's artillery. The North Vietnamese are out there, hidden in the jungle, and they're already testing you. Everyone around you drops low, instinctively, like it's second nature. You're a second too slow, standing frozen in the open while your ears ring. Then a hand yanks you down, shoving your face into the mud just as another explosion tears the air apart. Dirt rains over your helmet, stinging your skin, rattling your teeth. You're coughing before you realise you're still alive. No one shouts encouragement. No one tells you you'll be fine. A grunt nearby just mutters, "Get used to it." And you will, because you don't have a choice. At Khe Sanh, incoming fire isn't a surprise. It's the soundtrack of daily life. By the time the shelling fades, your heart is hammering and your hands won't stop shaking. You tell yourself that it's just adrenaline, that you'll calm down soon. But you don't. The shaking never really goes away. It just hides, waiting for the next blast to drag it back out. You finally crawl toward the shelter that's supposed to be yours. It's little more than a dugout with a sheet of corrugated metal thrown on top, covered with dirt and sandbags. You duck inside, but there's no relief. The air is stifling, hot and damp, with barely enough oxygen to breathe. The floor is wet, pooling with rainwater and mud. A rat scurries across your boot before vanishing into a hole. You want to chase it out, but you know better. The rats live here as much as you do, maybe more. Some are the size of cats, fat from gnawing on garbage and chewing through rations. They're not scared of you. If anything, you're the intruder. You try to sit down, but the ground squelches beneath you. Your pack drops beside you, splashing in the shallow puddle. Everything you own is already damp. You wonder if anything here ever stays dry. Spoiler, it doesn't. Somewhere outside, someone starts laughing. It's not a happy sound. It's a sharp, broken laugh that makes no sense until you realise it's the only way to survive this place. Jokes about rats, about the food, about the mud swallowing your boots. They're not funny, but they're necessary. Without them, the weight of it all would crush you in a day. You look around at the other Marines huddled in the bunker. They're stripped down to their shirts, skins shining with sweat, helmets resting in the mud. A couple are writing letters by flashlight, pencils scratching against paper that will be smeared and smudged by the time it reaches home. Another is staring at nothing, eyes glazed, rifle across his knees. No one talks much. Words feel heavy here. They get swallowed by the dirt and the noise. Every once in a while, you hear the whine of insects, the buzz of flies circling, or the distant bark of a dog that doesn't belong to anyone but survives off scraps. You try to ignore it all, but the sounds build, stacking on top of each other until silence seems impossible. Out here, quiet doesn't exist. It's either explosions or the buzzing chaos of life clinging to this place. The hours drag, but time doesn't mean much anymore. The sun rises and sets, but you barely notice. The mud stays red, the air stays thick, and the war keeps pressing down. You're not counting days. You're just counting moments between shelling, waiting for the next time the ground shakes and the sky cracks open. And this is just the beginning. You've only just arrived at Khe Sanh. You haven't yet learned how to sleep in mud that never dries, how to eat food that tastes like metal cans and mildew, how to carry gear that grinds your shoulders raw, or how to keep breathing when the air itself feels like it's trying to drown you. That all comes next. For now, you're just here, sitting in the red mud, realising that nothing about this place is temporary. It's going to stay with you. The mud, the smell, the fear. They sink in, deeper than your skin, deeper than your bones, until you can't tell where Khe Sanh ends and you begin. You've managed to find a spot to collapse in the mud-soaked shelter, and for a little while your body convinces you that maybe sleep is possible. It isn't comfortable, nothing here is, but exhaustion has a way of dragging you under, whether you like it or not. You curl against the damp wall, helmet tilted forward, rifle within arm's reach, and you let your eyes close. The smell of mildew, sweat, and wet earth never leaves your nose, but your body doesn't care anymore. It just shuts down, desperate for rest. And then the world rips open. It starts with a low whistle, a sound you don't recognise at first, because you're still halfway in a dream. But then it swells, sharper, meaner, until the air itself is screaming. Before you even open your eyes, the ground bucks under you. A deafening crack splits the air, and your entire body lurches forward as dirt and sandbags come crashing down. You don't need anyone to explain what just happened. You're under fire. There's no alarm clock here, no gentle wake-up call. At Khe Sanh, the day begins with incoming artillery, and it doesn't matter if it's 3 a.m. or 6 at dawn. Shells don't care about your schedule. The first blast shakes the walls of the bunker, rattling the corrugated roof like it's made of tin foil. The second one is closer. so close that you feel the air being sucked out of your lungs before the concussion slams it back in. By the time the third lands, you're scrambling on hands and knees, half blinded by dirt, heart hammering so hard you think it's going to punch straight through your ribs. Outside, the entire base is alive with chaos. Boots pounding against mud, voices shouting orders, someone yelling for a corpsman, someone else screaming curses at the sky. Flares crack open above the wire, washing the landscape in pale white light that turns every shadow into a ghost. The jungle in the distance flashes with muzzle bursts. The ground keeps shaking again and again until you can't tell if it's the artillery or your own body trembling. You're supposed to move, to grab your rifle, to get into position, but for a few seconds you just freeze. It's not fear in the way you imagine back home. It's something deeper, more paralysing. Your brain can't catch up with what's happening. You're half awake, lungs burning with smoke and dust, ears ringing so loud you can't even hear your own breath. You don't know if the next shell is going to land directly on top of you, and part of you doesn't even want to find out. Then someone shoves you hard in the shoulder, and you snap back into motion. You clutch your rifle, stumble out of the bunker, and drop flat into the mud just as another explosion tears through the perimeter. Shards of metal scream overhead. They don't whistle like in the movies. They hiss, fast and sharp, and when they land, they chew through anything in their path. Wood, sandbags, human bodies. You press your face into the dirt, tasting mud and blood all at once, and you tell yourself to stay as low as possible, because standing up is suicide. The barrage goes on. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Maybe more. You lose track because time doesn't behave normally anymore. Every second stretches, pulling so thin it feels like it might snap. Your muscles ache from staying flat against the ground, but you don't dare move. You can't. You listen to the shells, trying to guess where they all land, as if prediction will somehow protect you. One explodes near the airstrip, sending flames curling into the sky. Another lands behind the wire, taking out part of a bunker you walked past yesterday. You imagine the men inside, and you try not to picture what's left of them now. When the shelling finally stops, the silence is worse. It's not real silence, but compared to the roar, the absence of blasts makes your ears buzz with emptiness. For a few seconds, you almost believe it's over. Then the shouting starts again. Not panic this time, but orders. Move. Check positions. Count heads. Drag the wounded. You lift your face from the mud, and it feels like tearing yourself away from glue. Your cheek is coated in red dirt, and when you spit, it tastes like iron. You force yourself onto your knees. Your uniform is soaked through, heavy with mud, sweat, and maybe blood you don't want to identify. You stumble toward the line, boots sinking deep with every step. The air is thick with smoke from burning fuel, and the sharp metallic tang of exploded munitions. Somewhere nearby, a man is crying out for help, but his voice keeps breaking into coughing fits. You can't tell if he's 20 feet away or 100. Around you, Marines are already moving like a machine. Some sprint to reinforce the wire. Others drag sandbags to patch up shattered walls. A few are bent over stretchers, lifting limp shapes wrapped in ponchos. You don't look too long, you can't. If you focus on the faces, you won't be able to move. One of the older guys, a sergeant with mud streaking his face, grabs your arm and shoves you toward the perimeter. "Get in position," he barks, like you're supposed to know exactly what that means. You nod, even though your brain feels like static, and you drop behind a half-collapsed berm, rifle braced against the sandbags. Your hands are slick with sweat, slipping against the metal, but you grip tighter. Out there, beyond the wire, the jungle shifts. Every shadow looks like movement. Every crack of a branch might be an enemy creeping closer. Your eyes burn from trying not to blink. Minutes crawl by. Then more flares arc into the sky, bathing the trees in ghostly light. You see nothing, and yet you feel everything. The weight of your rifle, the mud pulling at your legs, the breath rasping in your throat. Somewhere out there, the enemy is waiting. Maybe they'll follow the artillery with an assault. Maybe they won't. That's the thing about Khe Sanh. You never know if the night will end with silence or with the wire exploding in fire and gunfire. The waiting is worse than the shelling. At least when the shells fall, you know the danger is real. In the stillness after, every second is a trap. Your nerves twitch at every sound. A rat scurrying in the trench makes your finger tighten on the trigger. A helicopter far off sounds like a rush of enemy boots. You know you shouldn't flinch at everything, but you can't stop. Your body is wired, buzzing like the ground before a storm. Eventually the all clear comes, though no one really relaxes. The word is passed down the line, no movement detected, hold positions. You stay crouched behind the sandbags until the muscles in your legs shake. When you finally get pulled back, it's not relief you feel. It's something emptier. Numbness. Like your body has decided it can't keep processing this level of fear. So it just shuts down the part of your brain that reacts. You stumble back toward the bunkers, ears still ringing, eyes wide and dry. Back inside, you collapse again onto the damp ground. Around you, other Marines do the same. Some light cigarettes with shaking hands, the glow of the embers bouncing off their hollow faces. Others sit silently, staring at nothing. No one celebrates surviving. No one claps you on the back or says you did well. Because here, making it through the morning doesn't mean anything. It just means you're still a target for the next round. You wipe at your face, and your hand comes away streaked with grime. Your heart hasn't slowed down. Your body aches like you just ran 10 miles, but you've barely moved. And yet, somehow you know this won't be the last time you wake up like this. Tomorrow, or the next day, or maybe tonight, it'll happen again. At Khe Sanh, incoming fire isn't an event. It's a routine. And now it's yours too. You duck back into your assigned shelter after the barrage, and it doesn't take long to realise this isn't really a place to rest. Calling it a room would be a joke. It's a hole hacked out of the mud, patched with logs, roofed over with bent metal sheets and sandbags that sag under their own weight. It feels temporary, like something you'd throw together for a night. But the truth is you'll be living in this little dirt coffin for months. You crawl in, trying not to bang your helmet against the low ceiling, and you settle onto a floor that's never dry. Water seeps up from the soil no matter how many times it's shoveled out. The mud squishes under you, cold and sticky, clinging to your uniform until you're carrying a piece of the floor with you wherever you go. The sandbags stacked around the walls look solid at first glance, but after a few days you'll notice they're rotting, torn open by weather, or chewed through by rats that treat the place like their own private hotel. The bags slump, leaking sand in little drifts that pile against your gear. When it rains, and it always rains, the bags absorb water like sponges, sagging further until the walls sweat mud. the bunker never feels like protection. It feels like sitting inside a damp throat that could collapse and swallow you at any moment. You set your pack in the corner, though it doesn't really matter where you put it. Everything gets wet here. Socks stay damp, no matter how often you wring them out. Paper turns soft and pulpy within days, so letters from home smear into illegible blurs before you can read them twice. Photographs curl and warp. Faces of girlfriends and families back home fading into blotches of grey. The smell of mildew clings to everything, until even your own skin carries the scent of rot. And then there are the rats. You heard about them before arriving, but hearing and living with them are two different things. They're not timid little things darting around in shadows. They're bold, fat and aggressive, swollen from gnawing on sea rations and scraps of garbage. At night, they skitter over your chest as if you're just another piece of the landscape. They chew through packaging to reach your food, leaving behind teeth marks and droppings that contaminate whatever's left. Marines have stories about rats biting through boots, about waking up with one chewing at a fingertip, about pulling blankets tight and still feeling claws scratch along their legs. You try to swat them away, but they always return. Traps don't work. Shooting them isn't an option. You'd run out of ammo before you made a dent in the population. So eventually you just stop reacting. You lie still while they climb over you, telling yourself that if you don't move, maybe they'll move on faster. It doesn't make it easier. It just makes you numb to one more piece of misery. Insects fill the rest of the space. Mosquitoes whine in your ears, biting any skin left exposed, their bites swelling into welts that itch until you bleed. Ants swarm over crumbs, carrying pieces of food larger than their bodies back to holes in the sandbags. Spiders nest in corners, big ones that don't bother hiding, their webs glistening in the dim light. Leeches drop from the ceiling after heavy rains, fat and slick, latching onto arms or necks before you even feel them. You peel them off, smear their blood-filled bodies into the dirt, and know there will be more tomorrow. The air inside the bunker is always foul. Stale smoke from cigarettes lingers in the damp air, mixing with the reek of unwashed bodies and mud. Ventilation is almost non-existent. Some Marines try cutting small holes to let in air, but that just invites more water during storms and risks shrapnel slicing through. So you breathe the same heavy air as everyone else, thick with sweat, mould, and the faint metallic tang of rusting steel. Light is scarce too. There's no switch to flip, no bulb to chase away the dark. You rely on flashlights or the faint glow of a cigarette tip, but batteries die quickly and replacements don't always arrive with resupply. Nights stretch out into black voids where you can't see the man lying next to you. You only hear his breathing, steady or ragged, and sometimes that's worse than seeing. Because in the dark, your mind fills the space with shapes that don't exist until you start believing they do. When rain pours, the bunker becomes a swamp. Water trickles through the roof, dripping onto your face while you try to sleep. Small streams form channels across the floor, turning into pools that soak through blankets and clothing. You shovel mud out by hand, but it always returns. The sound of rain on metal sheets is relentless, pounding against your skull until it feels like the earth itself is mocking you. Every storm is a reminder that you're not in control here. Nature is. Sleep comes in fits. You curl against your rifle, one hand resting on it because setting it aside feels like inviting disaster. Every creak of wood, every scamper of a rat. Every distant thump from the hills yanks you awake again. Dreams blur with reality until you're never sure if you actually slept or just closed your eyes for a few minutes. The exhaustion builds, stacking day after day, until you function more on instinct than thought. You stop expecting to feel rested. You just hope to close your eyes long enough to lose track of time. Sometimes you wonder if the quarters are meant to break you down as much as the enemy does. The filth, the rats, the endless wet. They gnaw at you constantly, wearing away little pieces of your strength. The battlefield outside is obvious, loud, explosive. But inside these bunkers, the battle is quieter, slower, and harder to fight. It's the kind of battle that doesn't leave scars anyone can see. It just burrows in, turning every breath, every night, every bite of food into another reminder that you're not supposed to feel human here. And yet, this is where you live. Not just for a day or two, but for weeks, months. An endless stretch of time where one muddy, rat-infested night bleeds into another. You wake, you eat, you sweat, you scratch, you wait. The quarters don't get better. You just get used to them. Or at least you convince yourself you do, because there's no other choice. Out here in Khe Sanh, this hole in the ground is the closest thing you have to home. Morning isn't much different from night. The sun doesn't rise cleanly here. It pushes through clouds and smoke in dull streaks that turn the sky into a dirty grey. The first thing you feel when you try to wake isn't energy. It's damp. Your uniform is still wet from yesterday, plastered against your skin like it's grown into you. The blanket you pulled over yourself is clammy, holding the stink of mildew and sweat, and your boots are soaked through before you even put them on. There's no fresh start, just a continuation of the same grime you've been carrying since the day you arrived. The idea of hygiene here is almost laughable. You tell yourself you'll clean up, but the second you look around, you realise there's nothing resembling a bathroom. No sinks, no showers, no soap lined up on a shelf. If you want water, you've got to haul it from a drum filled days ago. And even then, it's brownish and warm from sitting in the sun. You splash some onto your face, and it smells faintly of rubber from the lining of the barrel. It doesn't refresh you. It just drips down, mixing with the sweat already forming before you've even stood up straight. Shaving is still required. The rules don't bend for mud or artillery fire. You pull out a rusty razor, dip it in a canteen cup, and drag it across your skin with no cream, no clean mirror. Just the reflection in a piece of scratched metal. Every stroke pulls, leaving patches of stubble and streaks of blood. Your face burns afterward, raw and irritated, but that's the price of regulation. You wipe the blade on your already filthy sleeve and tuck it away, knowing you'll do it all again tomorrow. Brushing your teeth is another ritual, though calling it brushing might be generous. You spit into the mud, pull out a worn brush or sometimes just your finger, and smear on powder or whatever paste you've got left from a tube that ran out weeks ago. The water you rinse with tastes of iodine or chlorine tablets, bitter and chemical. It kills germs, maybe, but it also coats your mouth in a flavour that lingers all morning. If you're unlucky and supplies are thin, you skip it entirely. Your teeth ache anyway, yellowing under the constant assault of canned food and instant coffee. Then there's the matter of using the bathroom. Back home, it's a room with a door and a lock. Here, it's a trench dug into the mud, with planks balanced across it. A makeshift latrine lined with lime powder and buzzing with flies that swarm the second you squat down. The smell is enough to make your stomach clench, but there's no avoiding it. You hover there, hoping the planks don't give way, swatting at the insects that land on your skin. Toilet paper is a luxury that disappears fast. When it runs out, you improvise with whatever scraps you can find. Old rags, damp newspaper, sometimes nothing at all. Washing your hands afterward isn't guaranteed. You splash a little of that warm chemical water from your canteen, but soap is rare and dirt clings too deep to scrub away. Your fingernails stay rimmed with grime. Your palms always smell faintly of whatever you touched last. Gun oil, mud, food out of a can. You wipe them on your pants, which are already streaked with stains you've stopped trying to identify. Your clothes never feel clean. You've been wearing the same uniform for days, maybe weeks, until the sweat stiffens the fabric and salt crystals form white lines across your chest and back. Washing them is a process that hardly works. You fill a helmet with water, stir in powder soap if you've got it, and beat the fabric until your arms ache. Then you hang it up to dry, but the air is so damp it stays wet for days. And when you finally put it back on, it smells worse than before. Most of the time, you skip the effort altogether. You just live in the filth, convincing yourself everyone else is just as bad. And they are. Socks are the one thing you pay attention to, because trench foot isn't just a story from history books. Out here, your feet rot inside wet boots. Skin turns white and soft, blisters split open, and infections creep in fast. So you peel off your socks, wring them out, rub your feet until the blood starts flowing again, and slide on another pair if you're lucky enough to have extras. If not, you stuff the same damp ones back on, and hope today isn't the day they finally give out. Bathing is a dream. Every once in a while, if you're stationed near a water source, you strip down and dunk yourself in a river or stream. But at Khe Sanh, surrounded by hills and mud, water is scarce, and most of it isn't safe anyway. So the closest you get to clean is pouring a canteen over your head, letting it trickle down your neck and back. Just enough to feel human for a minute before the heat and dirt reclaim you. You never feel truly washed. You just feel temporarily less disgusting. Lice become part of the routine. You scratch until your skin breaks, dig through your hair for the tiny white eggs clinging to strands, and sometimes burn your shirt over a flame to kill the ones burrowed into the seams. It doesn't matter. They always come back. Everyone itches. Everyone has bites that scab over. You stop talking about it because there's no point. Complaining doesn't kill bugs. By the time you finish your so-called hygiene routine, you don't feel cleaner. You feel worn down. Every attempt at cleanliness here is temporary, undone within minutes by the heat, the mud, and the endless sweat. You step out of the bunker, shirt clinging to your chest, boots squelching in the red dirt, and you know you'll stink just as badly by noon as you did when you woke up. But you do it anyway, because the routine is the only thing separating you from giving up. The base itself smells like proof of this failure. Latrines stinking in the humid air, garbage pits smouldering with scraps, unwashed bodies baking in the sun. You breathe it all in while you light a cigarette or sip bitter instant coffee, and you tell yourself this is normal. Because here, in Khe Sanh, it is. Normal means rats running across your boots while you shave. Normal means washing your hands with water that tastes like chemicals. Normal means smelling like sweat, smoke, and mud, no matter how many times you scrub. It's not about being clean. It's about holding on to whatever scraps of humanity you can before the day starts tearing it away again. You shuffle out of the bunker after the half-hearted attempt at cleaning yourself, and the morning hits you with another wave of sticky heat. The sun isn't high yet, but it doesn't matter. Even at this hour, the air is heavy enough to make you sweat through your shirt before you've even thought about food. Your stomach growls, but it's not hunger for something good. It's just the hollow ache that tells you your body is running on fumes and will take whatever you shovel into it. Breakfast here isn't a meal. It's a test of how low your standards can go. The supply chain doesn't send fresh eggs, bread or bacon sizzling in a pan. What you get instead are boxes stamped US government property, filled with sea rations and the infamous powdered eggs. Someone in the rear decided these were good enough to start a day of hauling gear and dodging mortars. Whoever made that decision never had to eat them in the mud. The eggs come in big cans. You pop one open and it smells faintly of sulphur, like a wet sponge that's been sitting too long. They don't look like eggs. They look like pale yellow paste that someone scraped off a wall. Cooked up in a battered pan over a burner, the paste congeals into clumps, rubbery and dry at the same time, sticking to the spoon like glue. You scoop a portion into your tray, and it jiggles in a way eggs aren't supposed to. The taste doesn't help. Powdered eggs hit your tongue with a chalky bitterness, like someone mixed dust and water and called it food. You chew, but it doesn't break down. It just smears around your mouth until you finally force it down with a swallow of lukewarm water or coffee. And that's where the coffee comes in. Instant. Freeze-dried, pre-measured in little packets that you tear open and dump into a tin cup. You stir it with whatever you've got. A stick, a spoon, the end of a knife, until the granules dissolve into brown liquid. Calling it coffee feels generous. It's bitter, metallic, and tastes faintly of the canteen cup itself. But it's hot, and it's caffeine, and that's enough. You sip carefully, because it scalds your tongue, and the bitterness lingers like burnt rubber. Still, you cling to it. The coffee isn't good, but it feels like the closest thing you've got to normal life. Sometimes you get bread or biscuits with breakfast, though calling them bread is a stretch. They're hard enough to chip a tooth, dense as bricks, and taste like cardboard that's been sitting in a warehouse for years. You gnaw on one while staring at the mud, and you wonder if this is supposed to fuel you for the day. The biscuits crumble into dry powder that sticks in your throat, and you wash it down with more of the coffee, which doesn't help much. If you're lucky, the ration box includes a small can of fruit. Peaches, pears, maybe fruit cocktail in syrup that tastes more like sugar water than anything fresh. That can is a prize. Men trade cigarettes, matches, even extra rounds of ammo for fruit. When you peel it open and sip the syrup, it's the closest you'll get to sweetness out here. But most mornings, luck doesn't visit. You scrape down eggs, gnaw a biscuit, and tell yourself it's enough. Cigarettes come with the rations too, tucked into small packs with names like Lucky Strike or Pall Mall. You light one after choking down the food, and the smoke curls up into the humid air, mixing with the stench of garbage fires burning nearby. The nicotine hits fast, calming your stomach just enough to keep it from rejecting the meal. For a few minutes, cigarette in one hand, coffee cup in the other, you almost feel steady. Not comfortable, not happy, just steady enough to keep moving. The setting doesn't help the appetite. You're sitting on overturned ammo crates, or crouched in the mud, or perched on sandbags that crumble under your weight. Around you, men eat in silence, spoons scraping against tin, smoke drifting across the group. Conversation is minimal. No one's talking about favourite foods back home, or what they'd rather be eating. That kind of talk makes the reality worse. Instead, you chew quietly, staring at the ground, and hope no incoming shells decide to land while you've got a mouth full of rubbery eggs. Flies swarm the food before you've even touched it. They land on the eggs, buzz around the fruit syrup, dive into the coffee. You wave them away, but they always return. You eat faster to stay ahead of them, but you'd never win. Some of them end up in your food, and eventually you stop caring. You're not going to waste calories picking out flies when the whole meal barely fills you anyway. You just swallow and move on. Sometimes, when supplies are tight or deliveries get delayed, breakfast is just leftover sea rations. Meat and beans out of a can, cold spaghetti, or ham and lima beans that taste like punishment. You pry open the lid with a knife, dump the contents onto your tray, and force it down. The grease coats your mouth, thick and nauseating, and you sip bitter coffee just to cut through it. Marines joke about the worst rations, but the laughter is thin. Everyone's eating the same slop. Everyone's stomach turns the same way, and everyone's just trying to get calories into their bodies before another day of sweat and mud. There's no sense of fullness. Breakfast doesn't satisfy. It just sits heavy in your gut, daring you to vomit it back up when the heat rises or the next shell slams too close. You tell yourself it's fuel, but it feels more like ballast, weighing you down as you grab your gear. And when you finally stand, brushing crumbs off your filthy uniform, you realise the day has barely started. You're already tired, already sweating, already itching from bites, and the taste of powdered eggs still clings to your tongue. The truth is, breakfast here isn't something you look forward to. It's something you endure, just another chore before the real work begins. The eggs, the biscuits, the bitter coffee, they don't make you stronger. They just remind you that this is survival stripped to its core. Food isn't comfort anymore. It's obligation. And the sooner you finish it, the sooner you get back to the mud, the gear, and the waiting. Getting dressed here isn't a simple act. It's not rolling out of bed, tugging on clean clothes and heading out the door. It's dragging yourself into the same uniform you've been sweating through for days, sometimes weeks, and convincing your body to wear it for another round of misery. The morning air is already heavy, thick with dampness, and the fabric feels more like a wet rag than clothing. When you peel the shirt over your head, it clings to your skin, dragging across bites and scratches that never heal. You tug at the sleeves, but the cloth doesn't give. It just sticks, plastering against your chest, turning darker as your sweat soaks into it almost immediately. The uniform is jungle green, though after weeks in the mud, it looks more like reddish brown, permanently stained by the Khe Sanh soil. No amount of scrubbing changes that. The dirt has become part of the fabric, ground into every fibre, until you can't tell where the uniform ends and the environment begins. You notice the smell every time you put it on, a mix of mildew, sweat, and the faint rot of damp fabric that's been through too many storms. It doesn't wash out. It never will. Boots are the next battle. You pull them on, laces stiff with dried mud, leather still damp from the last rainfall. The inside squelches against your socks, which are never truly dry, no matter how carefully you rotate pairs. You stuff your feet in anyway, because walking barefoot here isn't an option. The boots grind against your heels, rub raw spots on your toes, and trap the moisture so your skin softens and peels. You wiggle your toes, already sore before the day has even begun, and you know by afternoon they'll be throbbing. But you lace the boots tight, because loose laces catch on roots, and loose boots slow you down. Socks are more precious than cigarettes. You change them whenever you can, but fresh usually means wrung out and less damp than the last pair. You rub your feet hard before pulling them on, trying to keep trench foot at bay. The skin is pale and soft, breaking open around the edges where blisters keep forming. You wince as the fabric slides over cracked heels, then push your feet back into the swamp, waiting inside your boots. It's a losing fight, but it's one you repeat every day because there's no other choice. Then comes the gear. A flak jacket, stiff and heavy, with plates that dig into your shoulders and make your back ache within minutes. The weight presses down, trapping heat against your chest until sweat pours from every pore. Your helmet adds more to the load, the strap cutting against your chin, the rim always dipping low enough to block your vision at the worst times. The helmet feels protective, but in the heat, it's just another oven clamped to your skull. You lift it off now and then to wipe the sweat, but the relief lasts seconds before the air clamps back down on you. Your rifle is never out of reach. You sling it across your chest, the strap cutting into your shoulder, the metal slick with condensation and oil. The weapon is both comfort and burden. Comfort, because it's the only thing standing between you and whatever waits out in the jungle. Burden, because it never leaves your side. It bangs against your hip when you walk, digs into your ribs when you crouch, and weighs on you constantly. Another reminder that you're never unarmed, never off duty, never at ease. Ammo pouches line your belt, each one filled with weight that drags your hips down. Canteens dangle, sloshing with warm water that tastes faintly of metal and iodine. A knife, grenades, extra magazines, they all pile onto you until you're carrying half your body weight just to step outside the bunker. Every strap rubs raw against your skin. Every buckle digs into a sore spot. The harness creaks when you move, the sound lost under the buzz of insects but always in your ears. The heat makes it worse. By mid-morning the air is thick enough to choke on, and sweat runs in streams down your back, pooling in the waistband of your pants, soaking your shirt until it clings like a second skin. You feel every grain of salt crusting onto your arms, every insect drawn to the moisture dripping from you. The gear traps the heat, sealing it against your body until you feel like you're boiling inside your own skin. There's no escape. You can't strip down. Regulation, discipline, and survival all demand the same thing. Stay dressed, stay armed, stay ready. You see the same misery reflected in the faces around you. Marines tugging at their collars, helmets tilted back as if the extra inch of space will let them breathe easier. Shirts darkened with sweat, boots caked in red mud, hands rubbed raw from straps and rifle grips. Everyone stinks the same, a mix of sweat, mildew, smoke, and damp cloth. It's not just smell, it's identity. This is how Marines at Khesan smell, and there's no covering it up. You try to adjust the straps, shift the weight, find a position that doesn't grind into your shoulders, but there isn't one. The gear isn't designed for comfort, it's designed for endurance, and endurance is what you're expected to provide. So you shoulder the load, ignore the itch of sweat rolling down your spine, and tell yourself to keep moving. Because dressed like this, you're not a person anymore. You're a target with armour, a body meant to keep walking no matter how hot, heavy, or miserable it gets. And once you're dressed, you don't get to take it off. Not until night. Not until the work is done, if it's ever done. The uniform, the boots, the flak, the helmet, they fuse to you through the day. Part of your body, part of your suffering. Even when you collapse into the bunker at night, you keep half of it on, because you never know when the next round will whistle in. Sleep fully dressed, boots by your side, rifle across your chest. That's how you live here. That's how you dress for war in this heat. The base assaults your nose before it does anything else. You think you've smelled bad before? Locker rooms, garbage trucks, a dead animal on the side of the road. But none of that prepares you for this. The stench here is constant, layered, and alive. It doesn't just sit in the air. It seeps into your skin, burrows into your clothes, and follows you everywhere you go. You can't escape it. You breathe it in with every shallow inhale, and it clings to the back of your throat like smoke. It starts with the mud itself, red, wet, and never-ending. It smells metallic, like iron mixed with damp clay, and it sticks to everything. Your boots track it into the bunkers. Your socks soak it up. Your gear is streaked with it, and when the sun hits it, the mud bakes into a warm, earthy stink that rises like steam. But the mud is the least of it. The real smell comes from the latrines. Trenches dug into the dirt, lined with lime, buzzing with flies that never leave. Every time you walk past, the air hits you like a slap. A choking mix of human waste, chemicals, and rot that makes your stomach lurch. The heat magnifies it, carrying the sour tang across the base until no corner is safe. You can smell it while you eat, while you sleep, even while you're sitting in the middle of a conversation. No one comments anymore. Everyone smells it. Everyone lives with it. The stench of the latrines is part of the air itself. Then there's the garbage pits. Piles of scraps, cans, and broken crates tossed together and are set on fire when they get too high. The flames don't cleanse. They just cook everything into an acrid smoke that drifts low across the ground, filling your lungs with the taste of burning plastic, spoiled food, and whatever else got thrown on top. Some days it stings your eyes so bad you can't keep them open. The smoke crawls into your bunker, settles on your gear, and leaves a film on your skin that you can feel even after wiping yourself down. Food doesn't help the air either. Rations rot fast in the heat, cans left open too long, draw flies instantly, and half the time what you're eating smells only a little better than the garbage pit it came from. Powdered eggs, greasy canned meat, biscuits going stale, they all carry their own odour that clings to your fingers and mixes into the atmosphere until you can't tell what's food and what's waste. When someone opens a rare can of fruit, the syrup draws flies in a black cloud, and the sweet smell is gone within seconds, replaced by the hum of wings and the sour stench of insects feeding. And then there are the bodies. Sometimes it's animals. Rats bloated in the sun. Dogs that didn't survive the crossfire. Pigs left half buried in mud. The jungle heat turns them quick, and the stink rolls in thick waves that make your stomach twist. Other times it's not animals. Sometimes it's the men. Not always your men, but sometimes them too. Enemy bodies left beyond the wire, half hidden in the brush. The wind shifts, and the smell sweeps over the base, a pungent, unmistakable reminder of what's waiting just outside. Death has its own odour, sickly sweet and cloying, and once you smell it, you never forget it. It lingers in your mind long after the breeze carries it away. The base is a stew of all of this: latrine fumes, garbage smoke, mud baking in the sun, spoiled food, rotting flesh. It layers together into something so strong it numbs you after a while. The first few days it makes you gag. After weeks, you stop noticing in the way you think you've stopped, but the truth is it's just dulled into the background. Then, when you finally catch a breath of clean air, if a storm sweeps through, or a rare wind comes down from the hills, it shocks you. You realise how foul the air has been all along, how much you've gotten used to breathing in poison. Cigarettes help mask it, for a moment. You light one, suck the smoke deep into your lungs, and let it burn away the stink. But when the cigarette burns down to the filter, the taste that returns is even worse, sharper now that your senses are raw. You drink bitter coffee for the same reason, scalding your tongue so it's less sensitive, but nothing really hides the base. It's inescapable. It clings. You crawl into your bunker at night and it's there. You wake up in the morning and it's waiting. You mail a letter home and the paper itself smells like Khesan, soaked into the fibres, a reminder you can't wash away. It isn't just unpleasant. The stench wears on you day after day. It seeps into your thoughts. You start associating every bad smell with danger. Smoke means a pit burning, but it could mean artillery strike too. The sour tang of rot could be garbage, or it could be a body. Every inhale reminds you you're living in a place that doesn't want you, a place that's already rotting even while you're still standing. And you breathe it in anyway, because there's no choice. The smell isn't just the background of life here. It is life here. It's the invisible weight pressing on you every second, gnawing at your nerves while you try to focus on surviving the day. It's the reminder that nothing here is clean, nothing here is fresh, and nothing here is ever going to smell like home. You've already sweated through your uniform before breakfast has even settled in your stomach. And now it's time to move out. Orders come down in short bursts. Clipped words shouted over the din of helicopters lifting off in the distance, and trucks grinding through the mud. Patrolling the perimeter sounds simple on paper. You walk the edge of the base, keep your eyes open, make sure nothing slips through. But the reality is something far more exhausting, far more punishing, and far more dangerous than anyone back home could imagine. The perimeter isn't a neat fence line. It's layers of barbed wire strung in chaotic coils, mines planted in the dirt, sandbagged fighting positions half sunk in mud, and stretches of open ground that look quiet until you realise how exposed they leave you. Beyond it all is the jungle, thick and close, the tree line like a wall of shadows that hide everything you don't want to think about. Every step you take along the perimeter feels like walking the edge of a mouth that could swallow you whole. Your boots sink with every stride. The mud grabs at you, sucking, clinging, refusing to let go without a fight. Each step feels like dragging cement blocks tied to your legs. The weight of your gear doubles under this resistance, the straps cutting deeper into your shoulders until your arms ache from simply holding the rifle in place. You try to keep your eyes scanning: barbed wire, bunkers, distant hills, tree line, but the mud keeps pulling your focus back to your feet, forcing you to yank them free again and again. The sun doesn't make it easier. Even when it's hidden behind clouds, The heat presses down like a hand holding your head underwater. Sweat pours off you in sheets, soaking through every layer of fabric. Your helmet fills with it, droplets rolling down into your eyes, stinging until you blink furiously. You wipe your face with your sleeve, but the sleeve is as wet as everything else, so you just smear mud and sweat into a new pattern. Your uniform sticks like glue, chafing your skin raw, and your socks squish inside your boots with every step. You keep moving, because stopping isn't an option. Your squad forms a thin line along the perimeter, rifles angled out toward the tree line. No one talks much. Words feel dangerous out here, like they'll give something away. Instead, communication is gestures. Hands pointing, heads tilting, eyes cutting sideways. You learn to read tension in the posture of the man ahead of you. Shoulders tight means he's heard something. A sudden crouch means everyone freezes. You become fluent in silence. The air is never quiet though. Insects drone relentlessly. A high-pitched whine that gnaws at your nerves until you want to scream. Birds shriek somewhere in the trees, their calls sharp and mocking. And underneath it all, the distant thud of artillery, sometimes yours, sometimes theirs, rolling through the hills like thunder that never stops. Every sound feels amplified, every twig snap, every rustle of leaves beyond the wire makes your heart slam against your ribs. You scan constantly, eyes darting from one patch of jungle to another. The foliage is so dense it looks like a single solid wall, but your mind keeps filling it with shapes. A shadow looks like a crouched figure. A glint of light looks like a rifle barrel. The more you stare, the more certain you are that something is out there, watching you, waiting. Sometimes there is. Sometimes it's just your nerves. Either way, you can't stop looking. The perimeter itself is a trap as much as a defence. The barbed wire cuts into your arms if you brush it, sharp points snagging fabric and skin. Rust flakes off in your hands if you grab it for balance. The minefield beyond it aren't just a threat to the enemy, they're a threat to you too, if you misstep or forget where the safe lanes are. Every patrol means moving carefully, deliberately, as if the ground itself is waiting to punish you. Every now and then you pass a fighting hole. A shallow pit lined with sandbags, half filled with water, manned by a marine who looks more like a statue than a person. He crouches low, rifle across his lap, eyes fixed on the horizon. You nod to him as you pass, but he barely moves. His face is blank, hollow from hours of sitting in the same spot, watching, waiting, straining to spot something before it spots him. You know you'll be in that hole soon enough, trading places, letting the next guy take his turn walking. Sometimes you catch a whiff of something foul carried on the wind, rotting vegetation, smoke from a distant fire, or the sweet, sick smell you know too well, but never name out loud. You breathe shallow, trying not to gag, but the air is thick and humid, clinging to your lungs like syrup. Every breath feels like effort. Every breath tastes like the base, like the jungle, like the war itself. Time drags on patrol. Minutes stretch into hours. Every second stretched taut with tension. You shift your rifle from one arm to the other, trying to relieve the ache, but the strap just cuts into a new spot. Your back screams from the weight of your gear. Your thighs burn from trudging through the muck. Your eyes sting from sweat, from staring too long at the same line of trees. You want to rest, to just sit down for a moment, but you don't. Sitting feels like surrender, and surrender isn't an option here. Now and then, the monotony breaks with sudden chaos. A flare streaks up, exploding above the wire and flooding the jungle in harsh and white light. Everyone freezes, rifles aimed, eyes wide. You wait, breath held, until the light fades and the shadows return. Sometimes nothing happens. Sometimes gunfire cracks from the distance, and you drop to your knees, scanning wildly, waiting for orders, waiting for the rush of adrenaline to turn into action. Most of the time, it's nothing. Most of the time, it's just nerves stretched so tight they snap at shadows. But every Marine here knows it only takes once. One real attack, one real rush through the wire, for everything to explode. And that's why the patrol never ends. You walk, you watch, you sweat, you wait. The perimeter isn't just a line on the ground. It's a line in your head. A place where exhaustion and vigilance blur together until you can't tell if you're seeing danger or inventing it. Every step wears you down, but every step keeps you alive. And when you finally circle back, legs heavy, shoulders raw, eyes burning, you know it won't be long before you're sent out again. Because here, at Khe Sanh, the perimeter doesn't guard itself. It feeds on the men walking it, hour after hour, day after day. Every morning starts heavy, and it only gets heavier. The gear isn't optional. You don't step outside the bunker without it. Rifle, helmet, flak jacket, ammo, grenades, canteens, knife, maybe a radio if it's your turn to carry it. It all adds up. And by the time you've strapped on every piece, you're lugging close to half your body weight. The straps cut into your shoulders, the belt digs into your hips, and the helmet sits like a cast iron pot clamped to your skull. Nothing sits comfortably. Everything presses, rubs, grinds, until your skin feels raw before you've even taken your first step. The rifle alone feels like an anchor. Sling it across your back. It slams against your ribs with every stride. Keep it in your hands. Your arms ache within minutes. Either way, it's always there. A steel reminder that you're never unarmed, never free, never allowed to move without thinking about the weapon clinging to you. You wipe the sweat from the stock, keep your finger near the trigger, and tell yourself it's worth the burden, though most of the time it just feels like dead weight dragging you down. The flak jacket makes it worse. It doesn't flex, doesn't breathe, doesn't forgive. It's a slab of weight pressing into your chest, soaking up your sweat until it smells like a wet carpet left in a basement. The heat trapped under it makes your skin burn, but taking it off isn't an option. You wear it until it becomes part of you, until you forget what it felt like to move without resistance. The fabric scratches at your neck, digs into your shoulders, and stiffens into shape with dried sweat and mud until it feels more like a shell than clothing. Then there are the pouches. 2, 3, 4 strapped to your belt, each one bulging with magazines, clinking faintly as you move. Grenades hang heavy at your side, shifting with every step like leaden fruit waiting to explode. A canteen or two slosh warm water against your hip, every gulp tasting faintly of iodine or chlorine tablets that never quite dissolve. If it's your turn with the radio, the load doubles. 30 extra pounds of metal and wire grinding into your spine, the antenna catching on branches, the straps biting so deep they leave bruises. Every ounce of gear feels manageable for the first 5 minutes. Then the mud reminds you why nothing here is manageable. The ground never stays firm. Every step sinks into red muck that grips your boots like it wants to keep them. You yank one foot free, only for the other to sink deeper. The suction pulls at you until it feels like the earth is trying to swallow you whole. You stagger forward, boots squelching, socks already wet, legs straining just to keep moving. The mud doesn't just grab at you, it climbs you. Splashes coat your shins, streaks up your thighs, splatter your uniform until the fabric is stiff with drying crust. Your boots grow heavier with every step, caked in layers that refuse to shake off. The weight doubles, triples, until it feels like you're carrying the ground itself with you. You stomp, drag, stumble, never walking cleanly, always half falling into the sludge. The rain makes it worse. Every storm turns the ground into soup, filling trenches, drowning walkways, washing away what little footing you had. You try to balance on planks laid down as paths, but they sink under your weight, shifting until you slip and splash into the muck anyway. Your rifle goes down with you, coated instantly in wet dirt. You wipe it off as best you can, but the mud never fully leaves, clogging every crevice until the weapon feels as filthy as you are. After hours, the weight stops feeling like gear and starts feeling like punishment. Your shoulders scream from the straps. Your back throbs under the load. Your thighs burn from pulling each foot out of the sucking ground. Every breath feels heavier. Chest locked under the flak. Lungs straining in the thick, wet air. The mud doesn't give you space to recover. Every step demands another ounce of effort you don't have. You walk anyway because you're told to, because everyone else is, because stopping isn't allowed. Your body adjusts, but not in ways that help. The straps carve grooves into your shoulders, permanent ridges of pain that stay even when you take the gear off. Your hips bruise from the belt digging into them. Your hands stay swollen and raw from clutching the rifle so tight. The mud chews your feet until the skin blisters, splits, and softens into sores that never heal. You learn to keep moving on aching legs. Learn to accept that the weight never gets lighter. Learn to swallow the thought that this is breaking you down piece by piece. Sometimes you imagine dropping it all, throwing the flak into the dirt, letting the rifle fall, kicking off the boots, standing unburdened for just a second. But you never do. The weight is your life. Every pound strapped to you is the difference between maybe surviving and definitely not. So you bear it, stumble under it, curse it in silence, but you never set it down for long. By the time you crawl back to the bunker at the end of the day, the weight hasn't left you. Even stripped down, you still feel it pressing into your shoulders, still feel the mud pulling at your feet, still feel your chest locked under something that isn't there anymore. You lie down and close your eyes, but your body doesn't forget. It never forgets. And when morning comes, you pick it all up again, strap it back on, and start the process over. The air never lets you forget where you are. From the moment the sun climbs above the hills, it presses down on you like a weight. It's not just hot, it's thick. Every breath feels like pulling soup into your lungs, heavy and wet. The humidity wraps around you until your skin feels sticky, coated in a film you can't wipe away. Your uniform, already damp from the night, clings tighter with each passing hour, plastered against your chest and back until you can trace every fold of fabric through your own sweat. You wipe your face with your sleeve, but it's useless. The sleeve is soaked too, and the sweat just smears across your skin. Salt burns in your eyes, stinging until they water. The sting mixes with grit, red dirt ground fine into powder that floats in the air and clings to your lashes. You blink against it, but the relief never comes. It's always there, the same way the heat is always there. Your helmet doesn't help. It traps the warmth against your skull, turning your head into an oven. Sweat drips down the strap, into your mouth, tasting like metal and salt. You tilt the helmet back to catch a little air, but then the sun hits harder, baking your scalp until it feels like it might blister. There's no relief. Shade barely exists here. The bunkers are suffocating, the trenches stinking and close. Outside, the sun rules everything. Your flak jacket soaks it up too. The padding turns into a sponge, sucking sweat into its layers until it hangs heavier than before. The fabric never dries. It just stays damp, slick against your undershirt, growing more rank each day. You shift it on your shoulders, trying to find a position that doesn't grind into your collarbone, but the heat makes everything raw. By midday, the jacket feels like a furnace strapped to your chest. Water doesn't taste like water, it tastes like tablets. Chlorine, iodine, bitter chemicals that leave your mouth dry even after you drink. You gulp it down anyway, because your body is bleeding fluid faster than you can replace it. The sweat rolls off you in streams, soaking into your waistband, dripping from your nose, pooling in your boots. You drink until your stomach sloshes, but the thirst never leaves. You're always behind, always one sip away from heat exhaustion. The insects thrive in it. Mosquitoes swarm your neck, ankles, wrists, landing on any patch of skin left uncovered. They whine in your ears, piercing your concentration until you slap blindly at the air. Ants crawl across your boots, up your legs, biting when you brush them off. Flies circle constantly, drawn to the sweat, the food, the latrines, everything. They land on your face, your lips, your eyes, and you can't stop them all. They're part of the air, just like the heat. And then, when the sun decides it's not enough, the rains come. Monsoon rains don't arrive as showers. They arrive as walls. Sheets of water crash down so fast you can't see 10 feet ahead. The dirt turns instantly to liquid, sucking at your boots until you stumble and fall. Trenches flood within minutes, water rushing past your knees, carrying mud, waste and rats in a swirling current. The bunkers drip from every seam, puddles forming where you sleep. Rainwater soaking your gear until everything weighs twice as much. You hunch under ponchos, but they barely matter. The rain sneaks in through every gap, dripping down your neck, running cold along your spine. You're soaked through in seconds, clothes plastered against your body, boots filling until every step squelches. You march anyway, water sloshing with each stride, the mud swallowing your feet deeper now, pulling harder. You slip, fall face first into the muck, and come up spitting water and dirt. No one laughs. They've all done it. The sound is endless. Rain hammering the metal sheets of the bunkers, pounding the ground, crashing against barrels and crates. It drowns out voices, drowns out orders, drowns out thought. You shout to the Marine next to you, but your words vanish under the roar. Even artillery feels muted, muffled by the storm, until you wonder if the sky itself is trying to cover the war. The rain doesn't cool you. It traps the heat instead, turning the air into steam. You sweat beneath it even as you're soaked. Your skin prunes, soft and pale, blisters opening where boots rub against wet flesh. Fungus grows between your toes, across your thighs, under your arms. Jungle rot, the corpsmen call it, but it feels more like your body giving up piece by piece. You scratch at the rashes, tearing the skin until it bleeds, but there's no relief. Night brings no comfort. The rain slows, but the air stays heavy. You lie in your bunker, water dripping onto your face, your blanket damp, your body sticky with sweat that never dried. The mosquitoes swarm harder at night, whining in the dark, feeding until your arms are a map of swollen bites. You roll onto your side, listening to the endless drip, drip, drip of water leaking through the roof, and you know tomorrow will be the same. Heat that suffocates, rain that drowns, sweat that never leaves. And through it all, you keep moving. You keep standing in the sun until your skin burns. You keep slogging through the monsoon mud until your legs tremble. You keep breathing the thick air until your chest aches. Because here, there is no pause button. The heat doesn't wait. The rain doesn't stop. And neither does the war. By the time you've slogged through the mud, sweated through your shirt, and swallowed enough rainwater to drown in, your stomach is ready to remind you it still exists. Hunger out here isn't sharp, not like the pangs you get at home when you skip a meal. It's dull, constant, gnawing, like a background hum that never turns off. The solution is simple: sea rations. At least that's what the supply line calls food. To you, it's another punishment in a can. The box is olive drab, stamped with block letters that tell you what's inside without giving you any reason to look forward to it. You tear it open, hands already coated with mud, and pull out a collection of cans that rattle together like a cruel joke. Each one is sealed tight, heavy in your palm, already sweating in the heat. They've been shipped across the ocean, hauled through the jungle, dumped on the base, and handled by too many hands. You don't think about how long they've been sitting in warehouses. You don't want to. You pull a can marked meat and beans. The lid pops with a dull metallic snap, and the smell hits you before you even see what's inside. Grease. Thick, congealed, clinging to the sides like paste. You tilt it, and the contents wobble, chunks of meat floating in fat that's already separating in the heat. The beans are mush, grey and lifeless, collapsing into the grease until it looks less like food and more like something scraped out of an engine. You grab your spoon, dented and filthy, and dig in. The taste is as bad as the smell. The meat is stringy, salted to the point of burning your tongue, but somehow still flavourless. The beans slide down like paste, sticking to your teeth. You chew, but there's no joy in it. You just move your jaw, swallow, and hope your stomach doesn't revolt. Sometimes the cans are spoiled, the contents sour with a tang that makes your throat tighten. You learn to recognise the smell fast, because a bad can isn't just unpleasant, it's dangerous. Food poisoning here isn't a trip to the doctor. It's days of cramps, fever, dehydration, and weakness that can kill you as surely as a bullet. Then there's ham and lima beans. No one calls it that. They call it ham and mother fombers. The reputation is so bad that the sight of the label alone makes men curse. You pop it open anyway because hunger doesn't care about reputation. The smell is worse than the beans. Sour, metallic, with a greasy undercurrent that sticks in your nose. The ham is pink, fatty and stringy. The lima beans are mushy, bitter. Their skin's peeling off like wet paper. Together, they form a sludge that looks like punishment served on a cafeteria tray. You choke it down because you need calories, not because you want them. The crackers that come with the rations are hard as rocks, pale, dry squares that snap into dust the moment you bite them. The dust clings to your tongue, choking you, forcing you to gulp down water or bitter instant coffee just to swallow. You smear peanut butter on them when you get lucky enough to find a packet, but even that is oily, separated, and clings to the roof of your mouth until you scrape it away with your tongue. And yet, hidden in the box, there's sometimes a treasure. A can of fruit. Peaches, pears, or the Holy Grail. Fruit cocktail. You peel back the lid and the syrup shines like gold. Marines will trade anything for fruit, cigarettes, extra ammo, even parts of their gear. The first sip of syrup is shockingly sweet, almost too sweet after weeks of salt and grease. The fruit is soft, sometimes mushy, but it doesn't matter. It tastes like something from another world. A world with kitchens and plates and the luxury of fresh food. You savour every bite, even as the flies swarm it, landing on the rim, dipping into the syrup. You wave them away, eat faster, and tell yourself not to think about what else has touched the fruit before you. Cigarettes come with the rations too, small packs tucked into the box. Sometimes Lucky Strikes, sometimes Pall Malls. You light one after forcing down the meat and beans, letting the smoke burn away the aftertaste. The nicotine calms your stomach, dulls the nausea, gives you a minute of quiet focus. For that moment, with the cigarette glowing in your hand, the spoiled meat doesn't matter. The grease coating your tongue doesn't matter. You just breathe in smoke and breathe out something close to relief. Of course, not every box is even this good. Supplies get delayed, shipments go missing, and sometimes you're left with whatever scraps are left behind. You might eat the same ration 3 days in a row, each time tasting worse as your stomach grows more rebellious. You chew faster, not slower, because if you think too much about it, you won't be able to finish. The men joke about it because if they didn't, they'd lose their minds. They swap stories about the worst cans they've ever eaten, about gagging halfway through, about trying to trade lima beans and finding no takers. The jokes aren't really funny. They're survival. A way of making the food seem less like another enemy. You laugh while you scrape the last bite out of the can, then light another cigarette to cover the aftertaste. You don't linger over meals. You don't sit back and savour. You eat fast, watching the sky, listening for incoming swatting flies away with one hand while the other shovels food into your mouth. You don't want to be caught mid-bite when the next shell hits. So you choke down what you can, toss the empty cans into the garbage pit, and move on. The food doesn't make you stronger. It doesn't make you feel full. It just keeps you upright, keeps you walking, keeps you alive enough to face the next round of sweat, mud, and waiting. Out here, meals aren't breaks. They're just another part of the grind. Another reminder that even when you're sitting down with a spoon in your hand, the war never leaves you alone. You don't think much about where you sleep back home. A mattress, a pillow, maybe some sheets that smell like detergent. Out here, sleeping isn't comfort. It's survival. And survival means digging into the earth until your hands blister and your fingernails split. The ground becomes your home, your shelter, your coffin in waiting. You carve it out because you have to, not because you want to. The dirt fights you every inch. The red clay clings to your shovel, heavy and wet, sticking to the blade so you have to slam it against a rock just to clear it. Your arms burn after the first few minutes, shoulders screaming as you stab down again and again, carving a hole just wide enough to fit your body. The sun beats down, sweat pouring off you, mixing with the mud until your uniform is streaked and soaked. You don't stop, because the longer you take, the longer you're exposed. The foxhole doesn't look like much when it's finished. A shallow pit, maybe 4 feet deep if you're lucky, lined with sandbags that are already leaking dirt through their seams. You crouch in it, knees drawn up, rifle across your lap, and tell yourself this is safety. It doesn't feel like safety. It feels like a grave with bad carpentry. The walls close in around you, damp and sticky, smelling of wet earth and mildew. Every breath tastes like clay. Water is your worst enemy. The rains fill the hole faster than you can bail it. You scoop with helmets, with canteen cups, with your bare hands, but the water always wins. Soon you're sitting ankle deep, then knee deep, mud sucking at your boots, socks soaked through, skin softening until it peels. You shift your weight to stay above it, but the ground collapses, sucking you deeper. You spend hours crouched in that pit, skin pruning, cold seeping up through your legs until your bones ache. The bunkers are better, but not by much. They're built from layers of sandbags, timbers dragged from the jungle, and corrugated metal scavenged from supply drops. At first glance, they look solid, reassuring. Step inside, and the illusion breaks. The air is damp, thick with mildew and smoke from the small stoves men light to keep warm. The floor is mud, slick and uneven, pooling water in the corners. Rats scurry in and out, bold as you are, chewing through rations, gnawing on boots, even biting at sleeping men's toes. You swat at them with helmets, stomp them under boots, but they always come back. The bunkers are dark, lit only by flashlights when you can spare the batteries, or by dim candles that sputter and smoke. The walls close in, pressing tight, the ceiling low enough that you bang your head if you forget to crouch. You lie on a cot if you're lucky, or on the mud floor if you're not. Either way, your body aches, the air is stifling, and the smell is worse. Sweat, mildew, unwashed bodies, the faint tang of gun oil and explosives. You breathe shallow to keep from gagging, but the stench still fills your lungs. Noise seeps into every corner. Outside, the jungle hums with insects and birds. Artillery rumbles in the distance, shaking the walls, sending dust trickling from the ceiling. Sometimes the shells land closer, shaking the ground so hard the bunker itself seems to jump. You lie there, staring at the sandbag ceiling, wondering if this one will hold, or if the next round will cave it in. The thought never leaves you, not when you're eating, not when you're sleeping, not when you're staring at the ceiling in the dark, wide awake. The foxholes and bunkers aren't just shelters. They're where you live. You spend hours crouched in them, days at a time, without leaving except to eat or piss. You learn to sleep sitting upright, rifle clutched to your chest, helmet tilted over your face to keep the rain from dripping directly onto your eyes. You wake with cramps in your legs, mud in your mouth, rats crawling across your chest. You swat them away and try to sleep again, because there's no other option. The ground itself betrays you. You dig in, but it shifts. Walls collapse in storms, sandbags split, timber rots. You rebuild constantly, shoveling more dirt, hauling more bags, stacking, restacking, trying to hold back a world that wants to bury you alive. Your hands blister until the skin peels. Your fingernails tear. Your back seizes from lifting. You keep digging anyway, because without the hole, you're exposed. Without the bunker, you're dead. There's no ownership, no permanence. You don't decorate. You don't make it yours. The hole belongs to whoever needs it next. You crawl out, and another Marine takes your place, crouching where you just sat, staring at the same mud walls, breathing the same foul air. Your sweat soaks into the dirt, and the dirt soaks into you, until you can't tell where you end and the foxhole begins. When incoming starts, you don't think about comfort anymore. You throw yourself into the nearest pit, mud swallowing you, water splashing your face, rats scattering underfoot. You press yourself against the wall, arms over your head, praying the sandbags hold. The ground shakes, the air fills with dust, and you realise again that this hole isn't safety. It's just the only place left to hide. And when the shelling stops, when the ground goes still, you crawl out of the hole covered in mud and filth, and you go back to digging. Because the hole isn't deep enough. It's never deep enough. The bunker isn't strong enough. It's never strong enough. The earth is your shield, your shelter, and your curse. You live in it, you work in it, you drown in it, and you keep carving into it, day after day, because it's the only thing between you and nothing at all. The first sound isn't the explosion, it's the whistle. A faint, rising shriek that cuts through the background noise of insects and men talking and boots squelching in the mud. You freeze when you hear it. Everyone does. The sound starts high, falling in pitch as it dives closer, and you know what's coming even before your brain has time to say the words. Artillery. Incoming. Then it lands. The ground heaves beneath you, throwing mud into the air, rattling your teeth against each other. The explosion punches into your chest, a pressure wave that steals the breath from your lungs. Dust and dirt rain down, clumps bouncing off your helmet, pelting your shoulders. Somewhere close, someone screams. Or maybe it's just the ringing in your ears making sounds out of nothing. Before you can process it, another whistle screams overhead, and another round slams into the earth. You dive into the nearest hole, knees slamming into the mud, ribs cracking against the edge of the sandbag wall. You curl into yourself, pressing your helmet down tight, arms over your head, rifle clutched to your chest like a lifeline. The hole fills with dust and smoke, acrid and sharp, mixing with the stink of wet clay and sweat. You breathe shallow, each inhale coated with grit, throat scratching raw. You can't see. You can barely think. You just wait for the next whistle. Shelling doesn't come in neat bursts. It comes in waves. A few rounds, then silence, then more rounds when you start to think maybe it's over. The silence is worse than the explosions. You crouch in the mud, listening, heart pounding so hard you can feel it in your fingertips. Sweat drips down your spine, though the air is cold now with dust. Every second stretches. You strain your ears for that whistle, the one sound that means it's time to brace again. And when it comes, you flinch before you even hear the impact. Sometimes it lands close. So close the shockwave feels like a giant hand shoving you into the dirt. The sandbags jump, dirt avalanches into the hole, and you press yourself deeper, certain the next one will land right on top. Other times it's farther away, muffled thuds rolling across the hills, and you almost relax until you realise the next one could just as easily be on your head. The shells don't follow patterns you can trust. They fall where they want. You think about running, but where would you run? The jungle? The open ground? The wire? There's nowhere safe. The only thing you can do is stay low, grit your teeth, and hope the earth between you and the blast holds. Hope the metal doesn't find you this time. Hope the math of random chance keeps your number off the list. Time stops meaning anything under shelling. Minutes feel like hours, hours like days. You lose count of how many rounds have fallen. You lose track of how long you've been crouched in the same position, muscles cramping, knees screaming, back aching under the weight of the flak jacket. Your neck locks up from holding your head down. Your jaw aches from clenching so hard with every whistle. You don't dare move. Movement feels like an invitation. Men cope in their own ways. Some mutter prayers, barely audible under the thunder. Others joke through clenched teeth. Dark humour meant to distract from the terror. Some go silent, eyes wide, staring at nothing while their hands shake uncontrollably. You see it in their faces. Everyone is waiting for their turn. Waiting for the shell that has their name on it. Waiting for the math to run out. The waiting doesn't end when the shelling stops. The silence that follows is worse in its own way. You crawl out of the hole, ears ringing, lungs burning from the dust, and the world feels muffled, unreal. Smoke hangs in the air, acrid and thick, carrying the stench of explosives and burning earth. The base is cratered, sandbags shredded, debris scattered everywhere. You scan for movement, for damage, for casualties, but part of you is still braced for the next round. Even when the sky stays quiet, your body doesn't believe it. Every sound, a slammed ammo box, a shouted order, a truck backfiring, makes you flinch, duck, throw yourself down. The waiting game never really stops. Even when the artillery isn't falling, you know it could start again any second. You know the enemy is out there, hidden in the hills, watching, waiting for the right moment. You look up at the ridge lines and imagine the guns sitting there, barrels pointed straight at you. You can't see them, but you know they're there. Every meal you eat, every patrol you walk, every letter you try to write is shadowed by that thought. They could start shelling right now. You don't sleep properly under that kind of waiting. You doze, maybe, head tilted against the damp wall of the bunker, rifle still in your hands. But every sound yanks you awake, heart pounding, eyes wide. You lie there in the dark, listening for the whistle, waiting for the first impact. Even your dreams aren't free of it. You dream of explosions, of the ground tearing open, of running but never fast enough. You wake with your body shaking, drenched in sweat, and realise the shelling never really leaves you. It's in your head now, a constant background hum you can't turn off. The base lives under that tension, day after day, week after week. You never know when the next barrage will start, only that it will. The enemy doesn't need to hit you every time. Just making you wait, just keeping you crouched in the mud, with your nerves frayed and your body locked in fear, is victory enough. The shells fall, the silence stretches, the waiting eats at you, and you keep crouching, keep waiting, keep living under the sky like it's about to collapse, because there's nowhere else to go. The war gives you many hungers, and not all of them can be fed with rations or cigarettes. The hunger for home is the one that gnaws deepest. Out here, every day grinds the same. Mud, sweat, shelling, waiting. Time blurs until you lose track of weeks. The only way you know the outside world still exists is when a mail sack drops from a helicopter. Battered canvas bags, spilling envelopes across the mud. You can feel the tension before the sacks are opened. Men gather around, pretending they're just passing by, eyes fixed on the pile. Names get called one by one, shouted over the thrum of generators and the clank of ammo boxes. Each name is a thread tying someone back to a world that still has kitchens and clean sheets, and people who aren't covered in mud. You wait, ears straining, stomach tight, until you either hear your name or you don't. When you don't, it stings. You try to shrug it off. Tell yourself it's nothing. Tell yourself mail gets delayed all the time. but the words don't quiet the silence in your hands. You see the others tearing envelopes open with shaking fingers, grinning at the handwriting, clutching the paper like it's gold. You look away, pretending not to notice, pretending you don't care that your name wasn't called. But inside, you're hollow. You wonder if they forgot. You wonder if the letter got lost. You wonder if there wasn't one written at all. When you do get one, it feels like oxygen. The paper is already stained, edges frayed from the long trip. Sometimes it smells faintly of home, or maybe that's just your mind tricking you. You unfold it carefully, fingers trembling, and let your eyes drink in the words. They never say much. Small updates, weather reports, stories about neighbours you barely remember, but it doesn't matter. It's proof that someone out there remembers you exist. Proof that there's something beyond Khe Sanh, beyond the mud and the shelling. But the mail never comes when you need it. It comes late, weeks late, sometimes months. A letter dated in January might land in your hands in March. News already stale, stories already old. A friend writes about Christmas while you're sweating in February heat. A girlfriend describes snow falling while you're bailing water out of your foxhole. The timing is cruel, twisting the knife. You want to feel connected, but instead you feel the distance more sharply. They're living in another world, and you're stuck in this one. Sometimes the letters don't come at all. You write, you send, you wait. You tell yourself they must have written back. They must have, but nothing arrives. Days stretch into weeks, and the silence grows heavier than any flak jacket. You picture the letter sitting in some warehouse, buried under crates, never to reach you. Worse, you picture the person not writing at all, moving on, forgetting. Out here, the mind fills in blanks with its own tortures. Men cling to their letters. They fold them into breast pockets, carry them in helmets, read them until the paper softens and the ink smudges. They trade cigarettes for stamps, beg favours from clerks, just to make sure their own words leave the base. Some write every night, scrawling under the dim light of a candle, ink bleeding on damp paper. They write about nothing and everything, about the mud, about the food, about how much they want to be home. They never know if the letter will arrive, but they write anyway, because not writing feels like disappearing. Reading aloud becomes ritual. A man with a letter reads it to himself first, then sometimes to his buddies, half joking, half proud, letting them taste a little piece of home through someone else's words. Others hide their letters, folding them away quickly, too private to share. Either way, the letters are currency. A man with a new one walks taller, shoulders straighter. A man with none slouches lower, eyes down. Mail call isn't just about paper. It's about morale, about proof that you're still tethered to something beyond this mud-soaked world. But the cruelest part is how the letters can't keep up with what's happening here. You read about a birthday party weeks after it happened, about a friend getting married months before you learn of it, about someone dying long after the funeral's already over. You carry news like ghosts, always out of step, always too late to matter, late to... And in return, the words you send back will arrive in the same broken rhythm, reaching your family long after the things you wrote about have passed. And so the waiting never ends. You wait for the shells, you wait for the rain to stop, and you wait for your name at mail call. You wait, heart tight, ears straining, stomach churning, knowing it might be today or it might be never. The hunger doesn't fade. It grows, sharper each day you go without. Sharper each day you watch someone else clutch a piece of paper with handwriting on it while your hands stay empty. War makes you think of action, of firefights and charging hills. But the truth at Khe Sanh is that most of the time nothing happens. The waiting stretches longer than the fighting, longer than the patrols, longer than the shelling. Days crawl by in mud and smoke, each one blurring into the next until you're not sure if it's Tuesday or Friday or some other day that doesn't matter anymore. The boredom hits hardest when the adrenaline drains away. The barrage stops, the patrol comes back, and suddenly you're left with hours to fill in a place where there's nothing to do. You sit on an ammo crate, helmet tilted back, staring at the same patch of red dirt you've been staring at for weeks. The jungle doesn't change. The bunkers don't change. The only thing that changes is how restless you feel. Cards become a lifeline. Men deal hands of poker on the tops of crates, betting cigarettes, trading rations, sometimes gambling away things they can't afford to lose. The cards are soft and bent, stained with mud and sweat, edges curled from humidity. They stick together when you shuffle, but no one cares. The game isn't about winning. It's about killing time, about distracting yourself from the fact that you're trapped in a tiny patch of earth with nothing but waiting to look forward to. Other times it's dice, or makeshift board games drawn on scrap cardboard. Cigarettes serve as currency, cans as tokens, sticks as markers, as you laugh when you win, curse when you lose, but the laughter feels thin, stretched. Everyone knows the game ends the second the next whistle sounds. You don't really play for fun. You play to fill the silence. Smoking is constant. The air is always hazy with cigarette smoke, the glow of burning ends scattered across the base, even in the dark. Men light up one after another, chain smoking through packs, trading brands, complaining when the supply runs low. The smoke fills your lungs, burns your throat, coats your tongue until you barely taste anything else. It becomes background noise, as much a part of life as the mud and the rats. Some men write letters, even if the paper is damp and the pen barely works. They hunch over in bunkers, scratching words onto envelopes that may not reach anyone for weeks. Others carve initials into sandbags, sketch pictures on scrap wood, or whittle sticks into crude shapes with their knives. Anything to keep the hands moving, anything to keep the mind from circling the same thought. When will it start again? The boredom isn't peaceful. It's heavy, suffocating. Every hour of silence feels loaded, like the world is holding its breath before it tries to kill you again. You sit there in the mud, staring at the jungle line, waiting for movement that never comes. Your nerves stay tight, strung like wire, so even in stillness your body doesn't relax. The quiet doesn't soothe you. It just makes you twitchy, makes you jump at the snap of a twig or the clank of a mess tin. Men fill the hours with chores, but even chores are half-hearted. Cleaning rifles, again and again, wiping mud out of the barrel, oiling the bolt, rubbing it down until it shines, only for it to be filthy again in minutes. Digging trenches deeper, hauling sandbags, patching leaks in bunkers with more mud and more timbers. The work never ends, but it also never seems to matter. The ground just caves in again. The rain just washes it away. Still you do it, because doing nothing is worse. Conversations loop in circles. The same stories get told until they feel rehearsed. The same jokes repeated until no one laughs anymore. Men talk about food back home, about cars, about women, about places they want to go when it's over. Sometimes they talk about what it will be like when they get back, planning futures they know might never come. Other times they fall silent, words drying up as the reality presses in. You can only talk so much before you realise talking won't change where you are. The boredom seeps into your body. You lie on your cot in the bunker, staring at the sandbag ceiling, counting the leaks dripping water onto your chest. You roll over, close your eyes, try to sleep, but the ground is too damp, the air too thick, the silence too loud. You toss, turn, drift in and out, waking at the smallest sound, always half alert, never fully resting. The hours stretch, each one heavier than the last, until you almost wish for something to happen, anything to break the stillness. But when something does happen, you regret wishing for it. The shelling comes, the patrol goes bad, the whistle screams from the sky, and you're back in the dirt, heart racing, ears ringing, stomach lurching. The boredom breaks, but it breaks into terror, and you realise the waiting wasn't so bad after all. Then the quiet returns, and you're back to the same endless crawl of time, stuck between bursts of chaos, wondering which is worse, the noise or the silence. Out here, boredom isn't rest. It's another weapon. It eats at you slowly, grinding your nerves down, wearing your patience thin, filling your head with thoughts you don't want. It makes every day feel like a week, every week like a year. And through it all, the war keeps you in place, forcing you to sit in the mud and wait, never knowing when the waiting will end or if it ever really will. Darkness at Khe Sanh isn't quiet, and it isn't calm. It's a different kind of battlefield. The sun sets, the rain slows, and the base sinks into blackness broken only by faint lanterns. The dull glow of cigarettes and the occasional flare that bathes everything in harsh white for a few seconds before the dark swallows it again. Night is when your shift on watch begins, and it's when you learn that silence out here isn't your friend. You sit in your foxhole or bunker entrance, rifle across your knees, helmet low, ears straining. The jungle never shuts up. Frogs croak, crickets chirp, cicadas whine, the wind rustles leaves in ways that sound too much like movement. Each noise bleeds into the next, until you don't know what's natural and what's something else. You've been told 100 times that the enemy likes the dark, that they move at night, that they test the wire when everyone's tired and jumpy. So every rustle makes your throat tighten. Every snap of a twig makes your finger brush the trigger. The base itself doesn't sleep either. Generators hum in the distance, steady but uneven, coughing when fuel runs low. Trucks creak on shifting ground. Somewhere a hammer strikes wood as someone repairs a sandbag wall. You hear boots squelching in the mud, the shuffle of men changing shifts, the low murmur of voices carrying across the damp air. And over all of it, you wait for the sound that doesn't belong. The sound you can't mistake. You fight your eyelids as they grow heavier. The hours drag, and your body begs for rest. But rest isn't an option. You jerk awake at the first sign of your head nodding, heart racing, hands gripping the rifle too tight. Falling asleep on watch isn't just failure, it's a death sentence for you and everyone around you, so you force your eyes open, shift your weight, bite your lip, dig your nails into your palms. Anything to stay alert. Then the noises come. Sometimes it's the faint clink of metal out in a wire, too soft to be wind. Sometimes it's movement, quick and low, in the tall grass just beyond sight. Sometimes it's nothing more than your own nerves, magnifying every sound until a rat rummaging in a garbage pit sounds like a company of men crawling towards you. You strain to see, but the jungle swallows light, shapes shifting with every flicker. You raise your rifle, finger hovering, chest tight, waiting for something you're not sure is even there. Flares go up without warning, fired from the perimeter, hissing as they streak into the sky. They burst overhead, burning bright, swinging on little parachutes as they drift down. For a minute the world is sharp, the wire glinting silver, the bunkers lit like stage sets, the mud gleaming under artificial day. You scan the horizon, eyes darting, knowing if anything is moving, now's when you'll see it. Then the flare sputters, fizzles, and darkness rushes back in heavier than before. Your vision swims, blinded by the flash, and for a few seconds you can't see at all. Those are the worst seconds, the ones where you're sure they'll come. Artillery sometimes breaks the night. Friendly fire, they say, launched into the hills just to remind the enemy that the guns never sleep. The blasts rumble across the base, shaking the ground, echoing through your chest. For a moment you feel safer, knowing the hills are being hammered. But when the echoes fade, the jungle noises creep back in, louder than ever, and the safety evaporates. Sleep is impossible even when it's not your watch. You lie in the bunker, helmet over your face, rifle at your side, and every sound keeps you hovering just below rest. The drip of water through the sandbags, the scurry of rats across your boots, the shuffle of your buddy rolling over on his cot. All of it cuts through the thin veil of half sleep. And when a distant shot cracks in the night, you're fully awake in an instant, heart slamming against your ribs, certain that the fight has started. Most times it hasn't. Sometimes it has. You never know which it'll be until it's too late. The nights stretch long, endless. You count minutes by the drag of your cigarette, by the sputter of the flare, by the steady tick of your own pulse hammering in your ears. Time crawls slower than in the day. The boredom is heavier, the fear sharper, and when your shift finally ends, when someone shakes your shoulder and tells you you're relieved, the relief is hollow. You stumble back into the bunker, but you don't sleep. You just lie there, ears still straining, waiting for the sound that means it's all about to start again. Out here, the dark doesn't hide you. It exposes you. Every sound feels like a signal. Every second feels like a test. And the only thing that keeps you awake more than your duty is the fear that if you close your eyes, the jungle will swallow you whole. Out here, the jungle fights you in ways the enemy never has to. It doesn't fire at you or shell your bunkers. It just eats at you slowly, quietly, until your body starts falling apart from the inside out. For a lot of Marines, it wasn't the bullets that broke them down. It was the sickness, the insects, the damp that never went away. You wake up every day in mud, sweat already sticking to your back, your skin crawling with things you can't always see. By the time you notice, they've already taken their share of you. Malaria comes first. You pop the little white pills they hand out, bitter tablets that taste like chalk, and make your stomach roll. But the truth is, they don't always work. The mosquitoes are everywhere, whining in your ears, biting through your sleeves, landing on your neck while you try to swat them all with mud-caked hands. You slap at them until your skin is red and raw, but it doesn't matter. One bite is enough. Then the fever sets in. It doesn't hit like a bullet or a shell. It creeps in, slow at first. Your head feels heavy. Your stomach twists. You think maybe it's just the rations, maybe just exhaustion. But then the heat rises. Your body burns from the inside out, sweat pouring down your face, soaking your uniform until it clings like a second skin. You shake uncontrollably, teeth rattling, and still you're sweating like you're in an oven. Your buddies wrap blankets around you, but they're damp, musty, no comfort at all. 1 hour you're boiling, the next you're freezing, shivering so hard you can barely hold your rifle. You drift in and out, half dreaming, half hallucinating, the world spinning in front of your eyes while the war keeps going around you. You don't get days off for malaria. You just suffer through it until it breaks, or it doesn't. Then there are the leeches. They're not dramatic. They don't attack in swarms or leap from the trees. They're patient, silent. You wade through knee-deep water on patrol, boots heavy with mud, and when you climb out, you feel something soft against your ankle. You peel back your sock and there it is, black, slick, swollen from feeding on your blood. They don't hurt, that's the worst part. You don't notice until they're fat, dangling from your skin like glistening slugs. You burn them off with a cigarette, or rip them off and watch the blood keep flowing. Thin streams that won't clot because of the leech's bite. You curse, wipe at it, slap a dirty bandage on, and move on. Hours later, another one is on your thigh, or your stomach, or even in places you don't want to think about. The jungle doesn't care where they attach themselves. They feed wherever they can, and you never feel clean again. And then there's the rot. The damp never leaves your body. Boots are always soaked, socks never dry, feet sliding in mud until the skin breaks down. First it's just blisters, tender spots on your heels and toes. Then the skin softens, peels back, turns white and raw. The smell comes next, sharp, sour, unmistakable. Jungle rot. Your flesh literally decaying while you're still walking on it. You try to dry your feet, but the air is too wet, the mud too constant. You change socks when you can, but there are never enough. You smear ointments, powders, anything they hand out, but nothing stops it. You keep walking, keep patrolling, every step grinding dirt into wounds that never heal. It doesn't stop with your feet. The damp works its way into every crease of your body. Armpits, groin, the backs of your knees. Anywhere sweat collects and skin rubs together. The sores break open, ooze pus, attract flies that swarm the wounds as if they own you. The stench clings to you, even stronger than the smoke or the mud. A sour reminder that your own body is falling apart. Some men can't stand, some can't walk. And out here, not being able to walk means you're a liability. No one says it, but everyone knows it. The corpsmen do what they can. They hand out quinine for the malaria, smear ointments on the rot, tell you to rest. But rest isn't real here. The shells don't wait for your fever to break. The patrols don't stop because your feet are rotting. You drag yourself out anyway, staggering under your pack, rifle slipping in your hands, sweat and pus soaking through your socks. You keep going because stopping isn't an option. The worst part isn't even the sickness itself. It's how normal it becomes. At first, the sight of a man writhing in fever or peeling leeches off his skin horrifies you. After weeks, it barely registers. You step over him, hand him a canteen, mutter something half sympathetic, and move on. You smell the rot, see the pus, hear the coughing in the bunkers, and it just becomes part of the air you breathe. Out here, the jungle doesn't just want you dead. It wants you to rot alive, slowly, piece by piece, until you can barely tell where you end and the mud begins. And as you scratch at bites that never heal, peel off socks that reek of decay, wipe sweat off a fevered brow with hands already shaking, you start to understand something. The war isn't just fought with rifles and mortars. It's fought with your own body every hour against an enemy you can't see, can't outshoot, can't outmaneuver. And no matter how careful you are, the jungle always wins in the end. Out here, fear isn't a spike. It isn't a single sharp moment, like when a rifle cracks close by or a shell slams into the ground. Fear at Khe Sanh is a fog. It wraps around you and never lets go. It becomes the air you breathe, the water you drink, the ground you walk on. It sits in your gut when you wake up, and it's still there when you close your eyes, if you can ever manage to sleep. The first days you feel it strong and obvious. Your hands shake when you hold your rifle. Your heart races at every whistle in the distance. But after weeks, it settles deeper, quieter, until it doesn't leave at all. It's not panic anymore. It's a constant hum in your body, a pressure in your chest that doesn't fade. You learn to walk, eat, and even laugh with it, still sitting there, heavy as your pack. You feel it in the routine. Standing in line for rations, you wonder if today's the day a rocket finds the mess tent. Walking to the latrine, you glance up at the hills, imagining a sniper's scope tracking you. Sitting in a bunker, you flinch when dust trickles from the ceiling, wondering if the next shell will punch straight through. Nothing feels safe. Not even the holes you dug with your own hands. The fear whispers that every step could be the last one. It wears you down in ways you don't admit out loud. Your jaw aches from clenching it all the time. Your shoulders knot up until your whole body feels locked. You grind your teeth in your sleep, if you manage sleep at all. You jump at sounds you used to ignore. A canteen dropped, a boot hitting wood, the crack of a board under weight. You laugh nervously, brush it off, but your hands don't stop shaking for a while after. The fear digs into your head too. You start imagining things in the dark, shapes moving just beyond the wire, whispers in the jungle when the wind shifts. You see shadows that aren't there, hear footsteps in the mud that turn out to be rats. Part of you knows it's nerves. Another part believes it's real. And when you live in a place where attacks come without warning, where death can drop out of the sky at any second, you can't be sure either way. No one talks about it straight. Men joke, curse, light another cigarette, spit in the mud. They act tough, brag about how they don't flinch, but you see it in their eyes. You see the way their hands twitch when a mortar tube thumps in the distance. The way they scan the hills even when they're supposed to be relaxing. You see the fear sitting in them just like it sits in you. Nobody's free from it. Some hide it better. That's all. And it doesn't let you go even for a second. You could be laughing at a bad joke, playing cards in the mud, even writing a letter that reminds you of home. Then a sound cuts through, and all that normalcy is gone. Your stomach drops, your skin goes cold, your heart races like you just sprinted a mile. It takes minutes, sometimes hours, for your body to calm down. And even then, it never fully does. The cruelest part is how fear becomes routine. You get used to it in the same way you get used to the mud, the rats, the stench. It's always there, sitting in the background, a constant tension you stop noticing until it spikes. You stop waiting for it to go away. You accept it, carry it, live with it. It becomes part of you, and you know it won't leave, even if you do. And while you sit in the bunker, sweating under your flak jacket, ears tuned to the night, you realise that this is the war. Not the firefights, not the headlines, not even the shelling. The war is the fear that never leaves, the weight in your chest, the voice in your head telling you every second could be the one where everything ends. And you carry it because you have no choice. Out here, there's no escape. Not from the jungle, not from the enemy, and not from yourself. Death doesn't announce itself here. It doesn't come with music, with speeches, with anything noble. It comes fast, dirty, and usually when you least expect it. 1 second someone's there, joking beside you, grumbling about rations, flicking ash from a cigarette. The next second they're gone, body torn open by metal, or buried under the collapse of a bunker, or lying in the mud in a way no one comes back from. You don't get time to process. You barely get time to look. The war doesn't pause for grief. At Khe Sanh, the base was under siege for so long that losing men became part of the routine. You'd hear the whistle, feel the blast, and someone wouldn't get up afterward. You'd carry them to the side, cover them with a poncho, and then go back to work. The first time, it shocks you to your core. You can't stop staring. You can't stop thinking about their face, their voice, how just yesterday they were alive. After a while, you stop letting yourself think that way. You can't, or it'll break you. You start to treat it like another job, another thing that happens out here, like the mud or the rats. But no matter how numb you try to make yourself, it still cuts. You still notice the empty space where they used to sit in the bunker. You still hear their laugh in your head when the group tells a joke. You still see their handwriting on a letter tucked in their pack. Half finished, never to be mailed. Sometimes you find photos, wives, girlfriends, kids. You stare at the faces in the pictures and realise those people are about to get the worst letter of their lives. The rituals are quick and cold. There's no time for ceremony. Bodies are wrapped in ponchos, zipped into bags, and carried to the landing zone to be taken away by helicopter. Sometimes you help carry them, mud sucking at your boots as you drag the weight across the ground. The rotors whip dust into your eyes, and the body lifts away, just another shape under canvas, just another number. And then the chopper disappears into the haze, and that's it. They're gone, and you're still here, sitting in the mud, waiting for the next round to fall. Some men take it harder than others. You see it in their faces, in the way they go quiet, staring at nothing for hours. Some lash out, angry at everyone and everything, fists clenched, voice sharp. Others joke more, laugh louder, trying to fill the hole with noise. Some light cigarette after cigarette until their fingers shake from the nicotine. Everyone finds a way to keep moving, but no one really escapes it. The loss settles into your bones, and you carry it even if you pretend not to. You learn not to get too close. You still talk, still share smokes, still trade stories, but you hold back a little. Because you know there's a good chance the man you're laughing with today won't be there tomorrow. You don't say it out loud, but you feel it. You start to measure your words, measure your friendships, because you don't want another piece of yourself ripped out when the next shell lands. But you can't avoid it completely. You're living shoulder to shoulder, sharing every misery. Bonds form whether you want them to or not. And when they break, it hurts every time. The worst are the ones you see go right in front of you. A man standing a few feet away, cut down in an instant. The spray of dirt, the smell of blood, the sound of a body hitting the ground, heavier than it should. You rush forward out of instinct, grabbing, shouting for a corpsman, but most times there's nothing to be done. You press your hands to the wound, feel the hot blood pouring through your fingers, and know it's already over. You hold on anyway, because what else can you do? And then there are the ones you don't see, the ones you just hear about. Word spreads fast in the base. So-and-so didn't make it, taken out on patrol, hit in the mortar pit, gone in a flash. You nod, you curse, you keep your face hard. Later, when you're alone, it hit you harder than you want it to. You remember their voice, something they said, the way they carried themselves, and it burns into your chest. But the next morning, you put your gear on again, pick up your rifle, and step out like nothing happened. You have to. The cruel part is how normal it becomes. Losing friends stops being rare. It becomes woven into the rhythm of your life. Mail call, rations, watch duty, casualties. You stop asking why. You stop wondering when it will end. You just keep moving forward, because the only other option is breaking apart. And out here, breaking apart means you don't make it home. So you carry the losses with you, tucked into the same space where the fear lives, where the sickness festers. They pile up, each one heavier than the last, until you're not sure how you're still walking under the weight. But you keep walking anyway, not because you're strong, not because you're brave, but because there's no other choice. The war doesn't stop for grief. It doesn't stop for you. And so you go on, step after step, day after day, with the faces of the dead in your head and the mud of Khe Sanh under your boots. When the order finally comes, you almost don't believe it. After months of shelling, of mud, of sickness, of counting the dead, the word spreads that you're pulling out. Not a patrol, not a supply run, not a temporary shift, gone, leaving the base behind. Some men cheer, some laugh bitterly, some don't react at all. You've been here so long that the idea of leaving doesn't even make sense. Khe Sanh feels like the whole world. Packing up doesn't mean tossing a few things into a bag. It means digging through months of filth to find what's still yours. Socks stiff with mud, letters soft and yellowed from damp air, photos warped and curling at the edges, rifles that smell of oil and rust, helmets dented, boots cracked, gear patched 12 times with tape and string. You gather it all, sling it on your back, and it feels heavier than it ever has, as if the weight of the whole base is tied to your shoulders. The helicopters come first. The sound of rotors chopping the air is familiar, but this time it means something different. Dust kicks up, red mud whipping into your eyes, stinging your face. You load onto the bird, shoulder to shoulder with men who look as worn down as you feel. No one talks much. The engines roar, the ground drops away, and for the first time in months, you see Khe Sanh from above. It's smaller than you imagined, just a scar carved into the hills. A cluster of bunkers and wire surrounded by jungle that stretches forever. From the air, you see the craters pocking the ground, the trenches snaking like scars, the smudges of smoke rising where shells landed days ago. You realise how small you really were, how little the base meant to the land around it. But you also realise how much it meant to you. Every inch of that dirt holds pieces of you, of the men you knew, of the ones who didn't make it out. Leaving doesn't feel like relief. It feels wrong. You half expect a shell to land on the pad as you lift off, half expect the jungle to open fire one last time, half expect the helicopter to be torn out of the air. But nothing happens. You rise higher, the base fading into the haze, and it's just gone. After everything, after all the waiting, all the dying, all the noise, you leave it behind in minutes. But it doesn't stay behind. The mud is still on your boots. The smell clings to your uniform. The ringing in your ears from the shelling never stops. The fear you carried every day doesn't vanish just because the jungle is out of sight. It follows you. You lie awake in safer places, ears straining for whistles that aren't there, heart pounding at noises that mean nothing. You reach for a rifle in the dark, only to remember you're not in a bunker anymore. The war doesn't let you go. And then there are the ghosts, the friends who didn't climb on the bird with you. Their faces show up when you close your eyes. Voices echo in the back of your head when the world gets quiet. You remember where they were standing when it happened, what they said the day before, what they left behind in their bunkers. You carry them home with you, heavier than any pack. Time doesn't dull it the way you hope. The mud fades from your clothes, the smell washes out of your skin, but the memories stay sharp. You sit in a diner stateside, sipping coffee, and the clink of a cup makes you jump. You stand on a quiet street and swear you hear rotors in the distance. You wake in the night, sweat soaking your sheets, certain you're back under the sandbags, waiting for the next shell. You try to explain it, but most people don't understand. To them, Khe Sanh is just a name, a line in the news, a place on a map. To you, it's everything you can't put into words. So yes, you leave. Your boots step onto cleaner ground. Your body boards the flight home. Your war ends on paper. But part of you never leaves that red mud, never leaves those bunkers, never leaves the sounds of the jungle at night. You carry it forever, whether you want to or not. That's what Khe Sanh does. It keeps you even after you've gone. So that's life at Khe Sanh. Not the version in films, not the highlight reel in history books, but the real day-to-day grind of what it meant to be a Marine on that base. The mud, the sickness, the boredom, the fear, the losses. Every minute stretched out, saw every second carrying the chance it could all end. For the men who were there, it wasn't about grand strategies or speeches. It was about surviving one more day in a place that felt determined to break them down in every way possible. And for many, leaving the base didn't mean leaving it behind. They carried it with them, the sights, the smells, the sounds that never faded. The jungle stayed in their heads long after they were gone. So as you drift off tonight, remember this wasn't a story with a clean ending. It wasn't meant to be. Because Khe Sanh never really ended for the men who lived it. It followed them quietly in the back of their minds, long after the last helicopter lifted away. Sleep well if you can, if